in order to live in the kind of society you want, you have to help build it. And I think that ties hand and glove into our vision statement. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our own communities, and in ourselves. And I dare say that I think those last words, in ourselves, the lasting change within ourselves, for me, is perhaps the most important part. Because we, by joining Rotary, we bring leaders in and we make better leaders. And think of everything that each and every one of you has learned, has garnered, has gained because of being a Rotarian. I can tell you without question, I know that I'm better at board governance, I'm better at event planning, better at public speaking, better at so many different things because of my membership in Rotary. And that's the paycheck, I think, that all of us get right now, this service paycheck. And again, the ability to connect on a global level, to get that passport stamp that says that we belong to something so much larger than ourselves. Speaking of things that are larger than ourselves, our polio eradication initiative, the #1 top priority of Rotary International. We know that it has been a year, the 2020, the one that we want to erase, was a year of many obstacles and many things that we want to forget. But there are still sometimes things to celebrate, even in the midst of despair, and polio eradication is one of them. Now, the reason for that is that polio, our polio infrastructure, which we, along with our partners, created more than 30 plus years ago, has enabled us to be able to play a front row seat in how things happen with COVID in our world today. This polio infrastructure helped us to shut down Ebola a few years ago. And likewise, when we went into lockdown, our vaccinators, the thousands of them in the more than 70 countries around the world, they had to take a pause. They had to step back and say, we need to be safe. But what they didn't have to stop doing was doing surveillance and contact tracing. And that wasn't just for polio, that was for COVID as well. We have been able to be active on the front lines in ways that we probably never could have imagined. And as vaccines begin to roll out across the globe, that polio infrastructure is going to play a pivotal role in many of the countries where that exists. On numerous calls that I've been on, particularly before the holidays, one of the top questions is, what is our role? What is Rotary's role as we roll vaccines out across the globe? And it's one where I believe that we have a voice. We have a voice as Rotarians to be able to talk about fair and equitable distribution. We have a voice to talk about with our friends and neighbors about vaccine hesitancy, because we understand that vaccines work. We've seen it firsthand, time and time again. We know the importance of making sure that our children are vaccinated, the more than 400 million children that we vaccinate a year for polio. And we have friends on the call, I know, from Pakistan and maybe perhaps Afghanistan. I was on a call this morning with members from both countries. And those are the two remaining endemic countries in our world right now. And that's one of the other reasons we were able to celebrate something good last year. And that was that Nigeria, the third of our endemic countries, we were able to take it off of the list. We worked tirelessly with the Nigerian Rotarians and Rotarians around the world to make sure that every last child there was immunized. And in August, we were able to take them off of the endemic list, which meant the entire African continent was also able to be declared polio-free. What a jubilant celebration to be able to say that we are one step closer to taking this dreaded virus, the second disease in the history of mankind that will be eradicated, to take it out, to knock it out, and to make sure that no child ever has to suffer from this crippling disease ever again. Now, I will tell you that there's a neat little story about what happened in Nigeria. Dr. Tunji Funsho is one of the Rotarians there. He's a doctor, and he's also the head of the Nigeria Polio Plus Committee. Now, he is a remarkable man who's been doing remarkable work for decades. And this is a cool story because he was recently recognized as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world because of his role in vaccination, his role as a Rotarian leading vaccination efforts in Nigeria. Now, the reason this happened is kind of neat. So we reached out, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 years ago, to the editor-in-chief of Time magazine, Jeffrey Kluger. And at the time, we were asking them to do a story about Rotary and healthcare. And he came back to us and said, why on earth would we do a story about Rotary and health? And so we had to educate him. We had to tell him about our polio eradication efforts, how we started this in the Philippines 30 plus years ago, and how we were making incremental steps and that we were down to 3, now 2 countries in the world. And Rotarians were working tirelessly to make sure that we knock this off the planet. And so, he started to understand, and he started to advocate, and he started to become a very close companion of ours, speaking at our international convention, at our World Polio Day events, and really being a champion for our efforts. And so when it came time to recognizing the 100 most influential people, he knew Dr. Funsho, he knew Tunji because of the good work that he was doing. And I think that that's a success very much for us as an organization, that when we tell our stories, when we share the stories of what we're doing, not only do like-minded people want to join with us and be part of our movement, but it's also a way to open the doors and the eyes to people around the world through the lens of media to be able to share our stories. Because I think that not only is it a way for us to attract more people into our organization, but it's also a way to retain our members by creating points of pride. When you open up a magazine, or you see a television program, or you listen to a radio show, or you see something on social media about the good work of Rotarians, your friends and mine, what we're doing around the world, I think that that's the kind of stuff that makes us say, I am so proud. I'm so proud to be part of something so much larger than myself. So COVID is the next step, and we are taking steps as an organization to determine exactly how we are going to support efforts going forward. Rotarians around the world, we didn't need you, when this all happened in March, we didn't need you to tell you to be people of action. You showed us that you already were. Rotarians went to work raising funds in short order, overnight, to provide life-saving and critical PPE to the front lines, ventilators, all different kinds of things to address food scarcity issues and understanding what our communities needed, locally and globally, or the global community, as I like to refer to it. And Rotarians, we were able to, since we went into lockdown, we have been able to technically move more than $29 million through the Rotary Foundation directly to the front lines to ensure that people have what they need. Now, that's what's moved through the Rotary Foundation, through global grants and through disaster response grants. But you and I both know that many of our Rotary clubs just jumped into action, and we spent money out of our own pockets, out of our own clubs, out of our own district's pockets, and we went to work doing what needed to be done. And so yes, 29 technically through the Rotary Foundation, but I would hazard a guess that it's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that Rotarians have been able to generate and put out to people who need it the very, very most, the most vulnerable, not only who are afflicted and affected, but the frontline workers who desperately need us to make sure that we can do everything we can to protect them so they can protect us. And so Rotarians, you have made, I think, every one of us should be proud. We should all be proud to be able to look around and see the difference that we have made. And going forward, the polio infrastructure will definitely play a role. We see it unfolding right now in India, where there is a national strategy that has already been put into place by Rotarian leaders there, working directly with government to say how can we help, primarily with logistics, being able to organize mass numbers of people for immunizations. And that is something that they are working actively on right now, a national strategy that trickles all the way down to the local level in each and every community. For those of us in countries where Our government, generally speaking, will handle the oversight for something like this. The vaccines will likely go into doctor's office, but the volumes that need to be done, there's going to be logistics work there as well. And so right now, the thing I can tell you is that a task force of the most senior Rotarians in our organization, President Holger, President-elect Shaker, myself on the RI side, and on the Rotary Foundation side, we have our trustee chair, Ravi Ravindran from Sri Lanka, John Germ from Tennessee, and Ian Risley from Australia. We are collaborating right now with the General Secretary, our Chief Communications Officer, to find ways that we can be a voice, that we can help to be your voice as we move forward, to showcase to the world the relevance of our organization as we try to put this virus to bed and as we step forward. So stay tuned in the coming weeks and months. There will be more information that we will talk about in terms of Rotary's response. But our response is really to make sure that we're talking with our own civic leaders in our own community, in our cities, in our provinces, in our states, and our regions, and where appropriate and as possible, our national leaders as well, to say, what can we do? How can we help? And so I encourage you to have that kind of dialogue, to see what it is that your club may do to help support these efforts, that we can all play a role. And beyond that, I know that you're already working tirelessly, making sure that your neighbors are taken care of, your members are taken care of. Our food pantries have never been overflowing more than they are right now. And that is both a positive sign that I think should fill our hearts, but it's also one that I think gives us profound sadness, knowing that there are people who need, in great need right now. But we should be very pleased that as Rotarians, we are able to provide help. We have a number of different things, switching gears just slightly, that we can be very excited about in the upcoming year. In the next couple of weeks, we have a president-elect of Rotary who is going to be sharing his vision for the year ahead, President-elect Shekhar Mehta from India. I know that membership is going to be a big thing for him. He's been talking about it already, recruiting and attracting new people to our organization. He's also going to talk a lot about service, and we know that the reasons that people join and stay, it's born out of the research. We join and we stay for service, hands-on service, getting our hands into something, and for the friendship and fellowship that we have with each other. And those are the hallmarks of who we are and what we do. So I know that he's going to be talking a lot about that in the next couple of weeks as he begins with his team to train the governors-elect, Rudy and everyone else, for the upcoming Rotary year starting July 1. On July 1, we also have exciting news. The environment will launch officially as the 7th area of focus for Rotary. Now, the environment is something that we have heard so much about and we've talked so much about. And I'm very excited that this is going to be a new area of focus for us. Rotarians, you already are doing so many things that touch on, that affect our environment. And this is a way to really solidify it and to showcase the importance of what it is that we can do, particularly in harnessing and leveraging global grants. And I know that we're going to see a lot of environmental global grants that are filed as we turn over into the new Rotary year. Now, I will tell you that we didn't come to this step lightly. And it was about a year and a half ago that when I was still sitting on the board of trustees, we were discussing the environment. We were discussing whether it should be an add-on to one of the current 6 areas of focus that we have, or whether it should be a standalone area of focus. And under the leadership of Ian Risley, our past president from Australia, he led a task force, including myself, that we talked a lot about this, and we talked to researchers, we talked to experts, we talked to Rotarians. We did a lot of heavy lifting to find out what was the right decision for us as an organization. And in the end, we looked at the financial impact, and we looked at the grants from the year prior. And of all of the grants that were done, more than $18 million of grants had some application to the environment. And so we knew that Rotarians were telling us this is important. And so it will be very interesting to see how we can engage as clubs, as districts, as countries to make a difference, to be part of the dialogue. an important part of the dialogue. And that can be something as simple as how we plant trees like President Ian asked us to do, or making sure that we're cleaning up our lakes and our rivers, cleaning up our own communities, different things like this, that small things that can sometimes lead to big change. One last thing that I want to just touch on, and then I'd love to be able to get into some questions and answers, is that one of the additional things that I think is a very important conversation for us to be involved in right now is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And many of you will know that we embraced and took on a new statement, a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement for the organization over a year ago. And this is a dialogue that is being held within many different groups, many organizations, NGOs, governments, etc., because it's the right conversation for us to have, to be more appreciative of what diversity looks like, inclusion looks like in our communities. Now, I don't need to tell the Rotary clubs that are on this call about this, because the Rotary Club of Brampton, I know that you are one of the most multicultural cities, as is Windsor, in our country. And we are a reflection of what our communities look like. But we have to do a better job. We have to do a better job of looking around our communities and making sure that we are a proper reflection of where we're at in every part of the world. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that there's some challenging conversations that we need to have. And I think that, quite candidly, the conversations might be a little bit different depending on where you are in the world. In some parts of the world, perhaps age is the most important part of the dialogue. In other parts of the world, perhaps gender is the most important part of the conversation. In some parts of the world, maybe it's gender and age and sexual orientation. There's many different layers to this onion, but what we have to do is make sure that we are a proper representation of our communities, because it is our diverse perspective that allows us, permits us, creates the opportunity for us to tackle and solve the world's most pressing challenges. That's because we are able to look at things all through our own unique lens and bring that kaleidoscope of opinions together so that we can do things the right way. If we all looked at things through one lens, through only one way of looking at things, we'd only ever solve problems one way. But because we bring this diversity together, this diverse perspective, we really truly can solve problems differently than even governments. And this is the hallmark of what we do as Rotarians. And so I think that there's going to be a lot more conversation about this going forward. And I challenge you to think of your own clubs and to take a look around and see, is there room for improvement? Is there room for a conversation, a dialogue? And then to have it. And then, once again, when we get to be in person, that will make a whole bunch of difference as well. And I do look forward to the day when we can get together, hopefully sometime soon, hopefully within this year, when in-person meetings can resume and we can start to be together to celebrate all of our strengths, and to understand that we've traversed this together, and that we will be stronger coming out of it.